Whenever thoughts arise, notice them and just bring the attention back to the breath. So you don't follow the thoughts, but you also don't reject them. You just notice them and then shift or bring the attention back to the present moment sensations of the breath. Mm-hmm. While we're paying attention to the breath, you should just take a moment to also notice the quality of your mindfulness or of your attention. You have your attention and mindfulness to the breath. And part of what we can work with, one is that we not get distracted, right? So we bring the mind back, and we kind of, on the one hand, the mind should be relaxed, so that there's a kind of calm, relaxed quality to our attention or mindfulness of the breath. But there should also be a kind of vividness, right? So it's not dull, it's not sinking or heavy. And so that's almost like tuning a guitar string. Not too tight, so that the mind's, we don't want it too tight because it will become agitated, but not so loose that it's dull. And then while we're still in this meditative mode, let's also take a few minutes. We'll shift our attention away from the breath and just do a little bit of a meditation on our motivation for uh, this day, uh, this couple of hours, or this weekend. Particularly, so let's just do a little bit of meditation on bodhicitta motivation, grounded in love and compassion. Actually, we can start with equanimity, or equalizing self and other. This is recognition we can. So we contemplate and use, contemplate. Let's say how everybody is exactly the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. So you can look inside ourselves and see how much we ourselves want happiness and don't want suffering. Actually, we can start just thinking everybody else on this Zoom call just as deeply as me wants happiness and not to suffer. There's no difference actually at all. Everyone around me is exactly the same in wanting to be happy and to not suffer. Everyone in my family, all of my friends, just like that, exactly the same as me, exactly the same as each other, in wanting to be happy, in wanting to not suffer. All the people I don't know are the same, wanting to be happy and to not suffer. Regardless of what language people speak, all the same in that way, in its most fundamental of ways. Regardless of nationality, of race, of religion, of gender, of career, class. everybody's the same in this way. Mm. Even like when there's a war and people are fighting each other, people on each side are exactly the same in wanting to be happy and to not suffer. Even like in the US, where people are extremely polarized lately, like even people, moderate people, or people on extreme ends, uh, even people with the most extreme of views are exactly the same in wanting to be happy and to not suffer. Like even a person actually who's totally overwhelmed by hatred, even that person wants to be happy and not suffer. They're confused, right? Somebody who's filled with hatred is confused. Right? They're actually suffering, but they want to be happy, just like I want to be happy. They want to be happy. So just from this contemplation, like we can begin to see, wow, like the purpose of my life, purpose of my day, an hour of my life, of each moment of my life. It can't only be my own happiness. It's not. That would be wrong. That would be unreasonable. Just from this little contemplation, you begin to see the purpose of my life is to cause as much, freedom from suffering and happiness as much as possible for as many beings as possible. And that leads to the next step in this contemplation, right? How, to the extent that I solely focus on my own happiness, like a self-centered attitude, actually, it doesn't work. Like through that kind of attitude, trying to only, trying to gain only my own happiness, I focus mainly on my own happiness to the exclusion of others. Like, first of all, it's unrealistic. To the extent that I'm under the sway of that kind of mind, then it actually, even though I want my own happiness, I create the causes of my own suffering. If we look in the world and at our own history, that's true. If I become like obsessive about my own well-being, actually I don't feel well. Always craving for something, angry at others for not, for I see them as obstructing me from getting what I want. Jealous of other people who have more, arrogant towards people who have less. And then I contribute to conflict with others by through the self-centered attitude. I like others have, if somebody else has a self-centered attitude and I have a self-centered attitude, then I contribute to conflict with them. All the negative karmic actions come out of that self-centered attitude. Like stealing, killing, lying, divisive speech, sexual misconduct, hurtful speech, so on. Right? They all come from the self-centered attitude. All the problems in families come from people being self-centered. All the problems in nations, in the neighborhoods, within states, between countries, right? All wars come from self-centered attitude. And the self-centered attitude gives rise to like craving, addiction, hatred, conflict. Everybody's equal in wanting to be happy. But when I obsess about my own happiness, the exclusion of others, then I'm contributing to all those problems. For myself, right? I'm contributing to my own creation of negative karma, my own mental agitation. I'm contributing to conflict with others, problems with others. And I create negative karma, which causes more suffering in the short run and also in the long run. Contemplates like that, then the self-centered attitude begins to seem like a claustrophobic, like a prison, like being stuck in a tiny box or something. Mhm. Ordinarily, we think it's our friend trying to make us happy. Mm. But actually, it's like being stuck in a tiny box. There's no room, no space. Mm. If we identify with that self-centered attitude, we like totally imprison ourselves. Mhm. By contrast, right, the mind that cherishes others, that loves others, that's open-hearted, has space. even like in the moment, as soon as you begin to love, to open your heart, to cherish other beings, immediately you have space. Immediately there's some feeling of contentment, of purpose, of spaciousness in your own mind. So that mind of love gives happiness actually right away. To the extent that we're cherishing others with love, and, or you have a good day, our relationship to others becomes uh, actually joyful. And it's like that feeling when you give, like coming on holidays now. If on a holiday you give somebody a present, right, out of love, and they enjoy it, like you actually feel more happiness than they do sometimes. That's that spacious mind, that open mind of love. Sometimes we like get a little flavor of its happiness. Like if you, whether you love someone, like a child, or you're falling in love with someone, right? There's an almost like when you're actually in that inner state, right? There's an almost ecstatic quality. That's the nature of love, of actual loving kindness. So love creates good relations. Like first of all, it creates happiness in your mind. It creates good relations in your family, good relations with friends, good relations like between neighbors, between countries. To the extent that our mind is uh, in a state of love, we actually all our karmic actions become positive. And when our actions express love, that's the very nature of good karma. Love makes others happy and also makes yourself happy. It causes happiness in the moment, causes happiness over time in this life, causes good future rebirth. Love is actually also loving kindness and compassion are also the main causes that lead one on the path to enlightenment. Right? So Buddhahood itself comes from love and compassion. So whether you want to be happy in the moment or just for this life or in your future lives, or you want to become again the complete happiness of enlightenment, they all come from love. And also love is realistic. It's grounded in, first of all, this awareness that everyone's the same, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And it's also grounded in the realistic understanding that my well-being and others' well-being are totally interdependent. That if I want myself, my family to be safe, then others have to be safe. Even the pandemic's a reminder of this, right? If others are healthy, if I want to be healthy, I have to help others be healthy. What happens with others and what happens to myself are totally interdependent. Whether you focus on like any aspect, even people all around the globe, right? And animals, like their well-being and my well-being are interdependent. And love grows out of that kind of recognition of our interdependence. So we can conclude this meditation with this resolution. I dedicate myself to love, to compassion, to cherishing others. Like I'll break out of and throw away the coffin of self-cherishing, of self-centeredness. And I dedicate my mind, my energy, my life to love, to compassion. And the ultimate expression of love and compassion is bodhicitta, and striving for enlightenment to be of ultimate benefit to all beings. And by the way, yourself is included, right, in all beings. So what that bodhicitta accomplishes, they say that, right, it accomplishes your own welfare and the welfare of others. So it's just the ultimate expression of love and compassion, striving to become enlightened for the welfare of all beings. And so with that in mind, we can do that verse of refuge from bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Good to see everybody. Well, we said today we would do like more of, like or today and next, and these are the two final classes of this series. And so for these two, we said we would do more, that's why we did longer meditation. We said we'd meditate more, like not so much cover didactic or something, but more like meditation. So we'll meditate in a few minutes on the Heart Sutra itself. Maybe we can make one general comment, which we already did some of this in practice, but I just wanted to say it out loud so that people can be aware of it in your own process today as we do that, which is like, you'll notice actually that there's like, there are many ways to categorize things, but one way Tibetan Buddhists in general sometimes categorize is that there's like analytical or contemplative meditation, and then there's what they call sometimes fixed meditation, right, or single-pointed meditation. And so when we were focusing on the breath, that was mostly practicing single-pointed, right? In other words, or fixed meditation. You were trying to fix the mind on the breath and just let the mind abide, right? It's actually the goal of that is calm abiding. So you're trying to get the mind, allow the mind or cause the mind to calmly abide on a single thing, right? And there you're not doing too much analysis. You're mostly trying to let the mind focus on one thing. And so the breath was the example we did so far. And then there's analytical or contemplative meditation, which is what we just did with the bodhicitta meditation, right? We weren't just letting the mind abide, we were actually contemplating, thinking, right? Imagining, like thinking of beings who suffer, thinking of how they feel, and putting ourselves in their shoes, and analyzing our own experience of what it's like to be when we're self-centered and what it's like when we're loving, sort of analyzing those, looking at our own experience, sort of looking back and going, yeah, what was that like? What is that like? What do I see in myself? What do I see in others? Right. So that's a kind of analytical or contemplative meditation. And so in Buddhism, we do both of those, and the reason why I mentioned that one is we just did it, so you can notice. But the other reason is you'll see when we meditate on emptiness in a few minutes that we do both. So what we're going to do, I looked over Lama's over to give some advice for this. So first, if we were in person, we would do actually, like he suggested, a whole prayer, but it was too hard. I didn't want to try to do that because not everybody has the same text. So I'll just guide us through a little bit of a visualization for Guru Yoga. That was what I recommended, is doing a little bit of Guru Yoga at the beginning. So we'll just do a simplified version rather than the more, like if we were in person, we could do Lama Chopa. It's quite long, or Gen Lagema, which is shorter, but anyway, it was too complicated to do textually. So we'll just do a very simple version of that, short, brief one, relatively brief. And then we'll meditate on the Heart Sutra. And the reason why I mentioned this idea of contemplative or analytical meditation and fixed meditation is when you meditate on the Heart Sutra, you combine those two. So when we come to a certain line, we'll stop. Like we'll read the Heart Sutra up to a certain line, and then we'll stop to meditate on that, on the meaning of that line, of a given line. We can do it with any line in the Heart Sutra, actually. But today we'll do a few examples, and next class we'll do some other examples. But so first, what you have to do when you get to a certain line and you want to contemplate, well, what does it mean? Is you contemplate, right? So you analyze. So if you were going to, so you would meditate. That's the first part of the meditation. Emptiness is you do an analytical meditation on the meaning of emptiness, actually, right? And there you're what you're trying to actually give rise to really is what they call an inferential understanding, an inferential cognition. So you're trying to realize emptiness through inference, through logic, through thinking. And the idea actually is that if you do that enough, if you practice that, you eventually actually, in a progressive way, you can gain an understanding, a different, actually, just yesterday, Ken Shrimshire was teaching online. He was saying there's a level of understanding that comes about through study. Then there's a level of understanding that comes about through analysis or through contemplation. And eventually there's a level of understanding that comes about realizing it through meditation, right? But they come one after the other. So anyway, when we analyze, that's part of the process of realizing emptiness. So you analyze emptiness until you come to some conclusion, some recognition, at whatever level we can in that particular session. It's not like you have to have some great realization. But then once you have some recognition, okay, that you're actually trying to gain an understanding, right? Oh, that's what emptiness is. And then when you gain that, you stop analyzing and you do fixed meditation. Now it's not on the breath, but it's on that insight or that understanding in your mind. And so then you absorb, they say you absorb your mind in that. And I just want to say something. So one is when you're doing that, you're trying to stay, just like we were with the breath, you're trying to sort of, now it would be on emptiness, right? But you try to then just keep your mind on emptiness for as long as you can in that state of understanding emptiness, right? And one point they sometimes make, and this is true with emptiness, but it's true with anything actually that you meditate on, is the idea is that you're trying to sort of approximate, eventually actually have the experience of when you meditate in that way on something single-pointedly, what you eventually want is for your mind and that object to experientially blend. Like it's like your mind is absorbed within that, if that makes sense. So at first it'll feel, when you're meditating on something, like this is true with anything, though, emptiness, or it could be, I'm gonna give an example. If you're meditating on a Buddha out there, right? Visualizing a Buddha and meditating on it. At first it feels like the Buddha's out there, right? Your mind's here and the Buddha's there. Of course, if you're visualizing a Buddha, that Buddha is not separate from your mind, right? It's a mental image. And the idea is as you get better and better at any kind of fixed meditation, your mind absorbs within its object, right? So it's no longer a sense of duality, but your mind kind of blends with the object. And that's good. That's what's supposed to happen. It takes time, so at first, if it feels kind of dualistic, that's okay. But the idea is that you're trying to sort of approximate and move towards a kind of blending of your mind with what it's meditating on. So in the case of emptiness, at first we'll analyze it, and then you kind of do this fixed meditation where you just let the mind abide within emptiness. And you're trying to sort of, almost, in a kind of non-dualistic way, let your mind and emptiness blend, mix. And then if you lose emptiness, if you lose it, and you're still time, it's still within, say, 10 minutes of meditation, and 2 minutes in, you lose it after a minute or two. Well, then you do a little analysis again and try to get back there to understanding it, and then again you absorb your mind. And then if you lose it again, you do a little analysis, get back, and then fix it. Just like with the breath, right? With the breath, when you lose the breath, you come back to the breath. Part of the reason we do the breath at the beginning is it's easy, right? In other words, you can always, because you're always breathing, you can always come back to your breath pretty easily. Whereas coming back to emptiness, if you're not familiar with it, it's a little harder, right? Sometimes at first it'll be hard. It's hard to remember what is emptiness, and you have to kind of analyze, you have to think. But it's familiarization, right? And that's, maybe I'll conclude this with that. The Tibetan word gom is usually the word for meditation. But actually in Tibetan, really what it means is familiarizing, right? So you're familiarizing your mind with something. You're familiarizing. And they say anything you familiarize with eventually becomes easy. And that's really true, isn't it, actually? Like, I sometimes think that, like, if you, I was thinking that, like, I was thinking about this last year. I was with a little boy who loved sports, and like, he knew everybody's statistics. He could, like, without any hesitation, he could say, oh, this player does this many, has whatever, like, every player and all their statistics because that's what was familiar for him, if that makes sense. So, and then whatever you get familiar with is my point, right? Somebody else could be, like, people are familiar with all kinds of things, right? If you talk to somebody who's great in gardening, they know all the different things about every plant. If whatever you familiarize your mind with, it becomes easy. So here we're trying to familiarize our mind with emptiness. So emptiness will become easy. That's the idea. And so if it's not easy at the beginning, that's okay, because it's unfamiliar, right? But the more you analyze and then absorb, and that process, that's how you familiarize your mind with emptiness. But okay, well, that was all. I just wanted to say those things for the just as an introduction. But maybe what we'll do then is I'll actually lead us through, like, the brief Guru Yoga, just a very brief version, and then we'll actually recite. What we'll do is we'll recite the Heart Sutra. This is what Lama Zopa recommended. So we'll recite the Heart Sutra up to, we'll get this first session, we'll just go up to the lines. We'll stop at form is empty and meditate, and then we'll stop, and then we'll read emptiness as form, and we'll meditate. And then after we do those meditations, we'll finish the sutra, and then we'll sort of pause. And if people have questions, we'll sort of talk at that point. So I think that, that's a good starting point. We'll just meditate on those points. But Rinpoche said it's good to, like, read the whole sutra. So, we'll read it, and then we'll pause to meditate, and then we'll pick back up with the sutra. And so if you have, I guess I'm just saying that. So if you have the sutra, have it out, and you can read along as we're reading it when we get to that part. And then we'll put the sutra down and meditate, on those lines. But anyway, so first we'll do a little bit of meditation, though. So a little bit of Guru Yoga. So the first step with that, though, is we just did refuge and bodhicitta. So let's go back to those. Right? So you remember, like, our reason for doing this practice, right, is bodhicitta, is that commitment to love, to compassion. Right, like leaving behind or throwing away the cause of suffering, which is the self-centered attitude. We commit ourselves again to love, to compassion, and to bodhicitta. And then let's do it simply. So, okay, so on you say in the space in front of you, and whether you're good at visualizing or not doesn't matter, right? But just like the way you think of something, right? If you if you think of anything, you bring it to mind. So now bring to mind. Let's bring to mind. So this Guru Yoga will bring to mind the teacher. And so if you, what I mean is like our Lama, our Guru. If you have a Guru, is like, so you could bring to mind the Dalai Lama, or hence, Lama Zopa Rinpoche or Yume Khyentse Rinpoche or whoever your Lama is, if you have a Lama. And if you don't, then you can think of Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha. Who's the teacher in Buddhism anyway. But so you think of I'll just say of the guru. You think that that person, that, the Lama, or whatever, the guru, is the embodiment of all the Buddhas for this practice, in this practice. So all the Buddhas manifest, they call this the single. Like there are sometimes where we visualize huge merit fields with lots of beings, but here we're going to do, it's called the single jewel tradition or something. So you just visualize one being, in other words. But you think that being is the embodiment of all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the Prachika Buddhas and Arhats, all the Dakinis, all the deities, all the Vajrayana deities, all the protectors. Anyway, all enlightened beings are embodied in that one visualized being. Mm-hmm. And even though we're bringing to mind like a form, right, or label that person, right, we can actually remember the meaning of the Buddha or the meaning of the Guru is the Dharmakaya. Right? So it's the mind of great bliss, realizing emptiness. It's qualified by great compassion. And so really, like whoever we're visualizing, that's the real meaning. Right? They're the omniscient mind of the Buddha, the wisdom mind of the Buddha that realizes the ultimate nature of things, and that has great compassion for all beings, including oneself. And so thinking of those inner qualities, right, of the visualized Guru, like as the embodiment of infinite love, of infinite compassion, of the wisdom directly realizing the ultimate truth. You feel actually devotion. Really, the main meaning here of devotion, in one sense, is that you also want to become like that. You like that, you want to be filled. You want to become in the nature of great love, in the nature of great compassion. You want to realize the ultimate nature of reality for the welfare of all beings, right? Yourself and all others. And so that's actually the meaning of prostration. So then we prostrate. So we can visualize prostrating to the Guru. But the real meaning of prostration is that we aspire to gain those inner qualities of love, compassion, wisdom, and skill in benefiting others. So with that in mind, then we can imagine or visualize, prostrating. You can imagine, they say, prostrating with bodies covering the entire earth, or like bodies, infinite bodies on all planets prostrating to the Guru. which really reflects like the vastness of the aspiration, right, to benefit others. Mhm. Mhm. And that's the first of the 7 limbs, prostration. We're doing the 7 limb practice, which is to create good karma or merit to help us meditate, to help us have success in meditating on the Heart Sutra for the welfare of others. So the next of the 7 limbs for that practice, for that purpose, is making offerings. So now we can just visualize, right? That so the guru is there, embodiment of infinite wisdom, love, compassion, skill. And so to practice as a practice of generosity, to train the mind in generosity, and as a way of creating positive karmic imprints. Take a moment to imagine, to visualize offering to the guru uh, everything. So just, you can visualize offering whatever you like. Flowers, food, and incense. And you can also actually, if you like, you can even imagine, right, since who's the guru here, right? The embodiment of infinite wisdom, love, and compassion. So actually, we could even imagine, visualize, like they sometimes say the mandala, right? But actually, you can imagine, for example, like you could visualize all beautiful things, but also you can visualize offering them like the planet. Actually, right? You can think actually, well, actually, those of us on this planet who are uh, using things aren't doing a very good job, actually. Right? We don't have wisdom. We haven't had compassion for each other. And so we're actually kind of messing things up. So I offer it to you. And actually, you might feel relief, right? If you imagine offering the country and the planet to the enlightened beings, you can feel relief actually, right? Imagine that like you're handing it over to beings of infinite wisdom and compassion. And then offer everything you find beautiful. Mhm. You can offer our own merit, our own good karma to the guru. You can offer our practice to the guru. And the third limb is purifying our negative karma through confession. So here the key is, right, so we're visualizing the guru who's the embodiment of wisdom, love, and compassion. And so the guru actually is, first of all, the guru knows. He knows and also accepts you, loves you. So the idea though is for yourself, right? You're acknowledging Like the Guru already knows your negative karma, right? If they're a Buddha. So you're not confessing it because they don't know. Actually, that's not the point. You're confessing it because you know the purpose is actually to acknowledge to yourself, right? Uh, in relation to the Buddhas, you're acknowledging to yourself that, like, that you've done negative things and that you regret them and want to change. Because the only way to change is to acknowledge our mistakes. So we take a few minutes now, a couple minutes, right, where in our mind we acknowledge to the Guru Buddha in front of us, our craving, our actions based on craving, our actions based on greed, our actions based on anger, our actions based on hatred, our actions based on pride, or arrogance, self-importance, in the negative sense, right? Our actions that grew out of ignorance and wrong understandings, where we harmed ourselves or others. So you have to really kind of take a moment to contemplate and acknowledge, yes, of course, like I'm under the control of ignorance and mental afflictions. Of course, I've done all kinds of negative actions that would lead to suffering. And so we're confessing them. We're like, that's part of that is right, we took refuge in bodhicitta. The confession is actually a kind of intelligent regret. Intelligent because we recognize I regret it because it causes suffering to myself and to others. For myself, it's negative karma. Right? And for others, actually, it's me contributing to the problems in the world. When I do things out of greed or hatred or ignorance, then I'm contributing to the suffering of others also, right? Relationally. I'm causing suffering to myself and to others by doing that, so I regret it. And through this practice of prajnaparamita, may it be purified. Emptiness with meditation is the best purification. So I can purify all those negative karmas to my practice today. Next limb is rejoicing. And so this is said to be the easiest way to create a lot of positive karma. So first of all, we can rejoice in the actions of, actually we can, there are infinite ways to rejoice, right? So we can rejoice, though, first of all, let's rejoice actually in the actions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right? And other great Buddhist masters, right? Who dedicate their lives, first of all, to promoting like peace, love, and compassion, who uphold the Dharma, who practice the Dharma, who teach the Dharma. If you know like the actions of some of those great beings, right? They I mean, some of them are just unbelievable, right? The amount of effort, the beauty of their lives, actually. Right? So we can rejoice in that. We can rejoice in the actions of Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, right, who practiced goodness and love, who practiced bodhicitta trainings for 3 countless great eons, became a fully enlightened Buddha, and then spread the Dharma on this planet. We can rejoice in the actions of all different Buddhas, right? All different bodhisattvas. The great masters of India and of other countries, Tibet, but also, great masters of China, Japan, all different countries, all the great Buddhist countries. And then also you can rejoice in the actions of any good beings, right? Any beings who do good things, including yourself, right? People you know. Of any action done with wisdom, any action done with kindness, any action done with love or compassion. And the next limb is different orders, but here we'll do it in the one or different ways to do this. But the next one we'll do is requesting the guru to live long. So again, if you personally have lamas who are alive, then you think of each one of them. May you live long. And then if you don't, or otherwise, you can also think of other, of just the beings on this planet who benefit others, and requesting them to live long. Particularly like the great upholders of the Dharma. So it doesn't have to only be your own teachers in that sense. But since you have that connection, especially your own teachers, if you have them, but then whoever upholds the Dharma in a pure way, you can request them to live long. Mm-hmm. Next, we also request them, like the Guru Buddhas, to turn the wheel of Dharma. Right? So requesting them to teach. And there's said to be great merit in requesting teachings. So you can imagine in a very general way asking them to, like, pour down the rain of Dharma. And then if you have particular topics, that you think would be of benefit to yourself and others, then in your mind you can specifically, like, right in front of you is the Guru Buddha. So you can specifically, like, request, Guru Buddha, who's a manifestation of infinite love, wisdom, and compassion and skill. Please turn the wheel of Dharma, please release the rain of Dharma. And then you can think, like, please specifically, for the benefit of myself and others, teach this or that, whatever topics you're aware of or think might benefit, then you request. And it creates a kind of karmic connection to having requested. So you don't think that the Buddhas are far away. Actually, the Buddhas know, actually. Like, so if you're requesting that in your mind right now, then, like, the Buddhas are aware of that request. So it's actually, you actually are requesting it in that sense of the Guru Buddhas. And finally, since we've just, like, purified and created vast merit to these practices, we dedicate them to full enlightenment. And so we dedicate them specifically, in this case, since we're doing the Heart Sutra, we can dedicate them for the welfare of all sentient beings. Like, may these merits serve for us to be able to practice the instructions of the Heart Sutra just as Avalokiteshvara taught them. And so may we, through these merits, may we have success in realizing Prajnaparamita. And then to following, traversing the five, like the Heart Sutra, right, teaches the Prajnaparamita, is the bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, and the way to progress through the 5 paths up to the path of no more learning, Buddhahood itself. So through these merits, may we traverse those 5 paths and become fully enlightened Buddhas for the welfare of all sentient beings, in order to thereby, like, do the enlightened activities just as Shakyamuni Buddha did, just as Avalokiteshvara did, just as the other great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas do. May we, through these merits, may we do like that. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll just read, and if you have it, you can read along, or we're just going to read the Heart Sutra. We'll stop at the line of form is emptiness. And I think what we'll do when we stop at that line is maybe we'll do a combination. So I'll lead a little bit of meditation, and then I'll also give some silent time for you to meditate on your own. So we can do both that way. Okay, so the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Arya Bhagavati Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Mass of Vultures Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. So we'll pause. So for form is empty. And so we're meditating on the emptiness of form. And so for form, right, you can use a part of your own body as the object, because that's form. Or you can use, actually, in this case, if you like, you can use your, I'll just do it that way. You can use your computer or your iPad or phone, whatever it is that you're connecting to this call through. I'll use that as the example, just to start. And again, I'll just lead a little and then I'll get silent, give some silence, a few minutes of silence. But first you have to identify what they call the object of negation. So like, actually think of your computer. Right? I'll call it computer, it could be an iPad, whatever. As soon as you think of it, right, it appears to exist there from its own side. And actually you have this experience, like when I was in the other room, sleeping, whatever, the computer was here, it exists on its own, from its own side. And we can see that, right? Like when I was, my feeling is when I was asleep, the computer was here. When I was having breakfast in the kitchen, the computer was up here. I wasn't thinking about it, but it was here. It exists independent. That's the experience, right? It feels like it exists independent of the mind label, from its own side, right there. So you have to kind of notice that aspect of how you perceive. In this case, I'm using computer, a form. Right? In this case, the form of computer seems to exist there. If you say, where is it? Because your mind would point. You almost want to point there. It's right there. So that's the object of negation. The computer that exists there is not dependent upon mind, labeling. It exists from its own side. Truly exists. It really exists. Truly exists. It's really there. But that's the perception. So now we could begin to engage in what. So you're holding that object of negation, right? The truly existing computer that exists there. that existed there when I was asleep, that existed there when I was in the other room, that doesn't depend upon my mind. Label. And it definitely seems to exist that way. So now you engage in what we call, like, I'm calling it the ultimate analysis, right? A mind analyzing the ultimate status of form, in this case, of a computer. So does it really exist that way or not? There are many different reasonings, right, that we can use, but for now, let's use a simple one, which is if it exists there, then it has to exist either as uh, as one with the parts, or as something separate from the parts. There's no other way it could exist. So the computer is either one with its parts, or it's separate from the parts. So first of all, it's easy, right? Is the computer exist totally separate from all of its parts? Like if you were to throw away all the parts of the computer, would you still have the computer existing? That's easy, but absolutely not. We know that. That's easy to see. If you threw away all the parts, you wouldn't think, oh, then I still have a computer there from its own side. So the feeling is the computer exists from its own side on the parts. So now I'll give some silent time. Right? But so I want to ask you to do is, this is the way to, so you still have this feeling of the truly existing computer existing from its own side. You know clearly it doesn't exist separate from the parts. So now you're going to analyze is, does it exist? Is it findable? Right? If it's truly existent on the parts from its own side, the way it appears, right? Like it was there when I was asleep. It was there when I was in the other room. It's really there from its own side. If it actually exists that way, it should be findable on its parts. So you can do your own analysis for a few minutes, whether you want to analyze the parts in the sense of just, the visible parts of the computer, like the plastic, you know, pieces of the frame and the, you know, silicone bits and all that. So you can do it that way, or you can, if you want to get even more subtle, you can get sort of like atomic, molecules and then atoms and subatomic particles. Get as detailed or as general, use however you like, but try to find analyze in an honest way, is there a computer that's findable on the parts, that actually exists on the parts? And if you can't find that, if you do, then that's that. But if you can't, right, then the computer is empty of its object of negation, right, which is a truly existing computer, a computer that actually exists of its own side. So take it now, give like 10 minutes, let's say, to meditate on emptiness. So I'll just say silent for 10 minutes, and each of us can meditate on emptiness in that way. Mm. So we'll just do one more line this time. So now the next line is emptiness is form. Mhm. So, like, before you meditate, right, it seems like form is self-existent, existent from its own side. But that was the object of negation, right, which we negated. But now we can see, right? We say sometimes they say it different ways, right? You know, within emptiness, form appears, or because of emptiness, form appears. But here we'll contemplate. I'll say a couple words and we'll contemplate. Um, the idea is that contemplate is form doesn't exist in the way it appears, but it does exist. And because of emptiness, right, these many different factors, right, it's interdependent factors, can give rise to the mere appearance of form. That form exists, say, within emptiness. The form appears due to emptiness as a mere appearance, merely labeled by the conceptual mind. So it's not, this doesn't, right, in other words, the truly existent independent form doesn't exist, ultimately or conventionally. Within emptiness, form appears as a dependent arising. How does it exist? Merely labeled by the conceptual mind. Emptiness is form. Let's take a few minutes to meditate on that. We'll just read the rest of the sutra. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, and not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly and completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance upon the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the bodhisattva, mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the bodhisattva, mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Well, and then since we have 10 minutes, I want to ask any comments or questions. Maybe I'll make a couple quick comments then. One is, hopefully you have a sense like that really, based on, do you begin to have a sense that of how you could actually, with the Heart Sutra, right, meditate on any line, really, couldn't you? Whereas any of the lines, I mean, we just did form is empty and empty form. Next class, we'll do some other lines, and we'll actually, shorten the other parts to have more time for the Heart Sutra, but actually any of the lines from the Heart Sutra, right, with no consciousness, right, you could just meditate on that, and so on. Any, no feeling, or whatever. All these different lines, unproduced, and each of those could be an extensive meditation. And really, that's the good way to relate. I guess part of the reason I think it's great that FPMT suggests ending the series on the Heart Sutra with this kind of practice is, this is the purpose of having studied the Heart Sutra, really, right? Like, in other words, we studied the different lines of it and the different, because then we can meditate on it, and so one point, and I'll say just a few comments. One is, so you could just, we'll do it again next class, but then anytime in your life, right, you can take the Heart Sutra and just meditate on the line. But then also if you do, If you're just doing practice sometimes during the day, or you're sitting to meditate, then you can just, even if you don't have the sutra in front of you, you can just think of a line and meditate on it. And then also sometimes the Holy Siddhartha makes a point, which is if you do like some of you I know do this, where if you do like tantric sadhana, right? There's a part in the sadhana where it says like Om Spavava Shudo Sarva Dharma Spavava Shudo Ham, or sometimes some sadhanas say Om. Anyway, there are other lines in sadhanas to meditate on emptiness. And if you just do some kind of, it's only Dalai Lama often points out, he says, if you just sort of have some vague idea, oh, everything's empty, that's not enough, actually. It's not sufficient. So, you can take a line from the Heart Sutra at that point. The fire gates also are empty of inherent nature. Right? You just think that, and then meditate on that for a few minutes. Then it makes the sadhana serve the actual function. Does that make sense? So whether it's just in the day you want to, whether you want to actually meditate on the Heart Sutra itself, like take the whole sutra and do what we just did, or you just want to meditate in a general way on emptiness, you just pick a line and think of it and then meditate. Or if you're doing like a sadhana or something, again, after that mantra to meditate on emptiness, or one of the mantras, Om Vajras Bhavava Makoham. There are different mantras you do, but then you can actually think, okay, there is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. And then sort of meditate. What does that mean? Until you actually get a sense of emptiness. And I'll make one last point. If you do sadhana practice, which not everybody does, but in case you do, is also there, it becomes very important. This line, form is empty, emptiness is form, right? Because if you're trying to then give rise to the appearance of a deity, right, it's supposed to be that emptiness is form. You're supposed to recognize that it's actually not. You're not actually. It's funny, isn't it? Like, otherwise you could do a whole sadhana and not be practicing Buddhism or not practicing tantric Buddhism, really, unless you're remembering, at least to some extent, as best you can, that it's emptiness is taking form, right? And that form, say it's, if you're meditating on green Tara, for example, or something, that, green Tara isn't just a green, if you're just visualizing some green form, that's not sufficient actually, right? The idea is that it's emptiness manifesting. And one thing I'll say is like, sometimes people say about, if you visualize, like we just did it, we visualized the guru in front of us, right? In the guru yoga practice. It's a little funny, isn't it? Like, because, so it's like emptiness takes the form of the guru. But actually if you meditate on what we just meditated on, emptiness is taking the form of your computer right now. And emptiness is taking the form of your body right now. And emptiness is taking the form of the room you're sitting in right now. That's what the Heart Sutra is saying. And that's it. I just think that's interesting, isn't it? Like, so that we would, so we have to remember that, right? Like, and the problem, actually, the reason we suffer is that we don't recognize that. That's the idea of Buddhism, right? Because we don't realize, actually, I'll share that. Like one day, a friend of mine, I often mention him, which is funny. He was saying, like, he was having a lot of pain in his body, and he said to his teacher, like, his lama, he said, my body, this sucks. I'm sick, and my body hurts. And his teacher said, your body's just a concept. And he thought, what the hell is he talking about? I think that was his initial response. But then he thought about it for years, and came and told me about it. Because he was sort of contemplating, what does that mean? Right? Your body's just a concept. Right? That was, his teacher was saying it in maybe a provocative way, right? But what it's getting at, right, is in what way does your body exists, right? In what way does it exist? Right? And we would say as in emptiness, right? Or another way of saying that is as a mere appearance to the consciousness, right? Merely labeled by the conceptual mind, body. Right? If you search the body, right, and all the subatomic particles, you can't find anything that's a body that's there. Right? But still a body appears. Right? And then you label it, my body. And then it's interesting, isn't it? It's very, I just want to share that. I keep thinking about that a lot lately. Like so it exists, right? But Lama Zopa sometimes says it's like it doesn't. He says it exists, but it's like it doesn't exist. When you understand how it exists, he says it's like it doesn't exist, but it exists. That's Lama Zopa will often phrase it that way. Because if you search all the parts, you can't find anything there that's substantially existent of your own body. And yet it exists as a mere appearance, right? Like, so those, like, you can't find anything there, right, from its own side that's truly existent as a body, or it's even truly existent as a part of a body. But those parts and the appearance arises to the mind, right? And it's labeled body by the mind, and that's how it exists. You see, I'm just sort of saying it out loud, what we were just meditating on, but you see how incredibly subtle that is, right? That's the Prasangika position or view, right? So it's not actually it's a very important point. That's why it says form is empty, emptiness is form, right? It's not that form in the sense your body doesn't exist. It does exist, right? But the body you perceive, right, as existing there, right? That body doesn't exist, right? But the body exists, right, as an appearance. And it's a valid cognition. It's valid. It exists. But it doesn't exist from its own side, or it doesn't exist. See, if we say it doesn't exist independently, that's true. But actually, that doesn't. It's very subtle, isn't it? That's why the computer, like you see what I was getting at there, like it seemed. I know we got to stop, but it seems like the computer. See what I'm getting at? Like, doesn't it seem that way, right? It seems like when you were sleeping, your computer. Of course, you would say, my computer was there. It was on my desk. Right? As if it exists somehow there, independent of your mind, right? But then if you search, you can't find it there. So it's empty. That computer that seems to exist there independently of your mind, that's emptiness, right? It's empty. And actually, it's weird. Then if you say, well, did your computer exist when you were asleep? Right? You could say, and actually, it's interesting. You would say, in one way, you could say, if you don't analyze it just conventionally, you would say yes. Right? But actually, how did it exist while you were asleep? Merely labeled by your mind now. Right? It feels like it existed from its own side while you were asleep. But actually, it existed while you weren't looking at it. How? Right? Because now your mind, it has an appearance to your mind. You can't see it with your eye. Actually, your eye conscious can't see the computer that existed while you were asleep, right? Last night. But your mind can label, can say, well, it's here now, and it was there. It appeared to me yesterday, and it appeared today. So there's a mental, right? A mental appearance of it that a computer existed in between. And that did. That's valid. But there's nothing more than that mental appearance, right? And the label. Anyway, it's very subtle points. But those are, and all I'm saying is, and I'll stop, but those are worth thinking about, right? That's contemplating the meaning of the Heart Sutra. Whether it's about your own body, or about the computer, or about your house, or about your car, or about the body of your friend, or whatever. Okay, and it's already scheduled the one more class, and I will just say that so we've got the one class scheduled in December, and then I think I'm waiting to hear back from Ken's room about scheduling some stuff. So I'm thinking that soon I'll send out. I said, well, the next series of classes will be for anybody who wants to come. Will be on tenets, Buddhist tenets, and I think those will start in January. So I'll send out a schedule soon to Gabe, and he'll post it and stuff. But soon I'll send a schedule with some dates for those. But we should do the dedication. So, the supreme jewel bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise and grow. Where it has arisen, may it not diminish, but increase more and more. In this snowy mountain paradise, you, the source of good and happiness, all-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Lauren.
Oh, thanks for the